When it comes to tarp setups and tarp configurations, I am a big believer in keeping things simple. In fact, my tarp, which is in my day sack just over there, is permanently set up so that as soon as I pull it out of my day sack, within a minute or two, I can have it set up in a traditional A-type frame configuration above my head. I've used that setup for decades. It's always served me well. It's always kept me dry. That is my go-to preferred setup. But now I've started to dip my toe into the world of hammocking, I'm not sure that's the optimal setup. So in this video today, I'm going to take a look at a subtly different setup. Hi folks, I'm Craig Taylor, and as always, a huge thanks for joining me here on my YouTube channel, The Bushcraft Padawan. I've got my hammock already set up, and I've been doing a little bit of field testing over the last couple of hours in there. My day sack is just out of shot, and in my day sack is my good to go, constantly prepped, ready to deploy tarp. If you're interested in how I set that tarp up to be a quick deployment tarp, then check out the video that has been linked in the top right hand corner of your screen now. I've had some fantastic feedback on that video. It's given people lots of ideas, and they're trying that approach out for themselves. So if you fancy taking a look at what I do normally, then check that video out. Also, if you enjoy this video whilst you're watching it and you're not yet a subscriber, please do consider clicking on that subscribe button so that you can get more out of my channel and more out of my videos in the future. Let's crack on. If you've not had the chance to go and check that video out, or you need a reminder, here's a really quick, simple reminder. Across the top centre of this tarp are some ridgeline loops. I have permanently threaded my ridgeline through 4 of those 6 loops. This is tied to one tree, this is tied to another, and then I have some bungee prusik loops and some bungee loops and some prusik cord to tension things. That then elevates it, and in each of the 4 corners of the tarp I take out the pre-attached, pre-fixed guy lines and attach those to fallen logs, tent pegs, trees, whatever. Really quick to set up, 2 to 3 minutes to set up from start to finish, as long as I've got the pegs. This configuration doesn't always work though with a tarp. I've seen people use almost an identical setup, but they orientate everything through, let's say, 45 degrees. So instead of it being rectangular, it looks more like a diamond type configuration. And I believe the reason people do that is to prevent the ends of the tarps, the ends of the hammocks, from getting wet. And of course, once they get wet, water flows downhill, and let's be honest, a hammock is nothing more than a valley of material with your backside in the bottom of it. So I'm keen to try this different configuration to see if by putting it in a diamond layout I can get away from the ends, or the risk of the ends of my tarp getting wet. That's the theory anyway. The people who I've seen do this though tend to use massive tarps, 3x3 or even 4x4 meters, usually DD tarps, and I'm never touching a DD tarp for the rest of my life, although I still have a poor quality one that I bought from them a few years ago. This is an Alpkit Rig 7. It is not a square tarp, it is a rectangle. It is just about a rectangular tarp. And I did that before I got into this whole hammocking thing, so maybe it was a decision that I will come to regret, but let me reconfigure this now and let's see how I get on. I actually think that before I reconfigure this tarp, I might actually show you what the layout is now, and then show you once I've made those changes, what that looks like. So I'm going to walk you around the tarp now really quickly, just to show you. It's now laid out. You can see, I hope, maybe not because of the ratio, but this is a triangular tarp. I'm kneeling next to one of the shorter edges, and this edge here, where I'm laying this pointer, is the longer edge. In each of the 4 corners, 1, 2, 3 and 4, I've got my guy lines permanently tied on, and then running across the centre of the tarp from the long side orientation, I've got my ridge line tied in through 1, 2, 3, 4, and what you may not be able to see, but here is a ridgeline loop that is not tied in, and over here is a ridgeline loop that is not tied in, that I use a bungee cord and push it to attach to. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this cord out here, so instead of the cordage running like that, you can see with the pointer, the cordage is now going to run like that from your bottom, let me get this right, from your bottom right hand corner of the screen, I think, as you're looking at this one here anyway, through these loops to this corner here. That's the plan. Let's see how I get on. Let's see if it's going to work. I've now made that change. I've moved the orientation of the ridgeline from that orientation to this orientation. I don't know if you can pick it up, but there's the ridge line there. A couple of things that have immediately sprung to mind for me. Right slap bang in the centre here, there is no ridge line loop. Now that's never bothered me, to be honest, when I've had the orientation like this. However, with the orientation now moving to this, there is a massive gap from here all the way over to here, where this ridge line isn't actually attached to the tarp at all. That isn't a problem with the orientation like this, because they're probably, I don't know, maybe 18 inches apart. They're a good 2 to 3.5 foot apart here. So that's a problem first of all. The second problem I've realised is these bungee loops that you probably can't see, but they're just loops of bungee cord here and similarly over on this side that help me to tension it. They're now in the wrong place. They really need to be here and way down in this corner here, because they tension off the ridge line. The ridge line is no longer running in this orientation, so they're in the wrong place. Doesn't sound like a big deal, does it? You could just take them off and move them, but I'm a big believer in trying to have one thing that suits multiple situations. What I don't want to be doing in a rush is taking bungee cord off, which is hard to undo anyway once it's tensioned, once it's had weight put on it, and moving it around. So I'm still going to run with this for the purposes of this video. Maybe I can figure a way around it, but it just seems to be a lot of extra faffing about and reconfiguring things, probably at a time when that's exactly the last thing I want to be doing if the rain's starting to come down. Ta-da! It's done. Or at least it appears to be done. I guess the only way we'll know it's done is when we have a downpour and I do or don't get wet, but it's kind of worked. And I'll be honest, I'll let you into a little confession here. I'm kind of, in a way, I'm kind of gutted that it's worked, because now I have to make a choice when I'm out about which setup I have. If it hadn't worked, then I could have stuck with what I know, but buried my head in the sand and just stuck with what I know. But now I have an option, and I know that the option from what we know so far works. There's a couple of little niggly things with it that I want to walk and talk you and show you now. I don't think they're deal breakers, unfortunately, at all, but just a couple of things, which is why it might not look as great behind me as it possibly could. Let me talk you through what those are. Let's come round this side then. Here's the edge of my hammock. No, it's not. Here's the edge of my tarp. If I just hang a drop line down from there, so you've got a sense of a true vertical from there, it's just a piece of paracord, you can see that it's a good almost a foot from the actual material of my hammock. I know we could get water runoff down here, but I've got some things in place to stop that. But all things being equal, there is a significant amount of tarp above the end of my hammock at this end and at the other end, trust me. What I'd like to be able to do is to actually shuffle this, where my hand is touching, this way a little, just so there was a little more at this end. There's absolutely stacks at that end, it's not quite central. I'd like to shuffle it a little bit, but as you can see, my prusik is where my fist is here. I think you can pick that up. I don't have any more room, probably about 2 inches, to shuffle it this way because of the spacing of the trees. That's what's caught me out here, is I have ran out of space between the trees to shuffle this end. That end has got, the end that doesn't need it has got significantly more tarp above the hammock that is needed. Having said that, let's just revisit this again. That's the end of the hammock, the end of the tarp there, and you can see where my hammock is under here. So I am confident, unless the rain was coming in sideways, which we know it can, let's not pretend it doesn't sometimes, that this would provide the coverage that I would need in anything other than a crazy rainstorm. Something else that I want to show you as well that I talked about earlier on, but I think it's a big deal now. I'm going to bring my finger into shot here, excuse the Mark 1 pointer, but here we can see there one of the ridgeline loops. Over here there is another ridgeline loop, and you can now see the distance between the two of them. It's more than I would like. Just as I was moving this camera around from the last shot that I took here, a little bit of a breeze picked up. Not much, you would hardly notice it, but a bit of a breeze picked up. And what I could see was that this area of the hammock here was just bouncing around all over the place. And of course it was taking the rest of the hammock with it, bouncing around as well. So it would be better, I think, if there was something akin to another ridgeline tie-out point at approximately this point here or thereabouts. I've just brought you to the other end of the hammock and tarp now, the end of the hammock and tarp where I said, trust me, there's loads of space there. Just wanted to do the same exercise again. If I just take a piece of paracord and drop it down from the end of the tarp there it is, there's the plumb line. It's a significantly greater distance between the end of my tarp and the start of my hammock at this end than there is at that end. So I guess the good news there is, if I was really out for an overnighter and was concerned about the weather, I could leave the tarp where it is and I could slacken off these tree straps, move this end slightly further this way, which would bring the far end slightly further this way. This would have slightly less tarp overhead cover, but still enough. That would have more overhead tarp cover. It would equal things out. So I think the trick here would be to not move the tarp, it would be to adjust the hammock underneath the tarp. Let me get you under here and just show you what I can see as I look down here. Welcome to my crib. I don't know why I said that, I feel like a prat now. Here we are underneath the tarp. The good thing, first of all, and I hadn't even taken this into account, but I hate tarps that I have to hunch over or kneel down or crawl into. This, if I stand upright, my head is pressing upon it, but not uncomfortably. I could live with this, trust me, I could live with the height that this is at now. I don't like it when I'm having to sort of hunch in, and at just over 6'2", I need a bit of head coverage. So this works well for me. I could still admin myself even out of my hammock underneath here. There's the hammock, there's the hammock ridgeline. I don't know if you can notice, but there's a piece of bank line just flapping about in the breeze here. This is actually my gear line for when I'm in my, just using my tarp in the normal rectangular configuration. This runs down the center overhead of my tarp, just like this hammock ridgeline is running center overhead here. So it is a bit of a nose, it is kind of in the way, well, it's not in the way a bit, it's just annoying. I don't like things flapping around. It gives me concerns when there's loose bits of cordage flopping around, things getting caught in them, things like that, people tripping over stuff, and it just becoming a bit of an admin nightmare. it's not the end of the world. I wouldn't take them off though. I think this is a problem with when I'm trying to use one tarp permanently set up, but trying to use it in two different ways. We come to things like this, where I want to leave that there for when I'm using my tarp in a traditional A-frame type setup. It does the job then. In this type of setup, one, it's in the way, and two, it's unnecessary because I've got my hammock ridgeline, my integrated hammock ridgeline here, but I can live with it. And finally, I talked about those rubber, those pieces of bungee cord, bungee cordage. Just bringing it into shot here. Again, that's pretty superfluous there. And in actual fact, I've kind of got around the problem by just prussicking straight into. In fact, let me show you. Picture paints 1,000 words. I've got around the problem by prussicking straight into. Oh, look at that. The bloody sun decides to put an appearance in right at that spot there. See if you can see that. Yeah, you can see that, good. Where my hand is now, that is the integrated hammock guy loop there. Where my hand is now, that's the thinner prusik cord that's permanently attached to my tarp ridgeline. I've simply just used a wooden toggle to join the two together. I could do this normally on my tarp, to be perfectly honest, but I like the shock absorbency nature of the thin bungee cord for when there's an absolute storm going on. I know that is absorbing a lot of the shock and the tension and the forces being demonstrated by that wind and the tarp flapping around. It's not being put into my prusik loop or my tarp or my tarp material as much because the bungee cord is doing a lot of that work. But again, I don't want to have bungee cord everywhere just in case I need to use it. But similarly, I don't want to be taking it off one place of the tarp and moving it onto another place because it's extra faff. So again, it's one of the downsides for me at the moment. It's not a huge downside. It's one of the downsides of trying to have a tarp permanently set up for one situation, but acknowledging I might need to use it in another one. A couple of things have just sprung into mind as I've been carefully manoeuvring my backside back into this hammock again. One, there's possibly no reason why this diamond type configuration can't become my default, because now I'm actually underneath it. As long as it's just me, there's still plenty of room for me to sleep, have plenty of overhead cover, and have some space to administrate myself. I don't think. Okay, first of all, there's as much space as there is with the original configuration, the A-type one, because the material hasn't shrunk, so there's enough coverage, there's enough space, but that space isn't as convenient. It tapers to a point of the diamonds which is inconvenient, as opposed to a standard A-frame type roof, which just lends itself to being better to administrate yourself under. So if I was on my own, there's probably no reason why this can't become my default, to be honest, which means that I can move this bloody annoying cordage that keeps tickling the back of my head. I could move that in orientation with the diamond. I could move the bungee cords to be in orientation with the diamonds as well. I could get rid of 2 of the 4 corner guy lines that I've got set up, because the ones that are actually up at the apexes, the high apexes of the diamond, they're irrelevant now. They're serving no purpose at all because the wooden toggle on the prusik cord is doing their job. There's only 2 ground attachments as opposed to 4, so I could reduce some size and bulk as well. So, you know, I'm reflecting upon and thinking there's possibly no reason this can't become my default, and that way, whether I'm a ground dwelling or hammocking, it's going to work out of the box or out of the pouch. So that was the first thing I was thinking of. And the other thing, before somebody mentions it in the comments, there's a couple of feet gap between the hammock ridgeline here and the tarp ridgeline, or the tarp ridge itself. There's a couple of feet difference. A lot of people have suggested to me, and I've read, that it's often a good idea to get your tarp down as close to this ridgeline as you possibly can. The reason being, if you drop the tarp, then the sides of the tarp drop as well, and you've got some protection, because remember, sleeping in a tarp, I found so far, is somewhat colder than sleeping on the floor. So you reduce, or you minimise, you reduce to a degree the wind that can pass through the tarp by dropping them. And I think that's a gleaming idea, and I think in incredibly bad weather conditions or cold weather conditions, that would be the thing to do. But like I said, I'm just over 6'2", so having that height to actually just stand upright under is appreciated, especially at this time of the year when it is still very, very warm. It is very warm at nights and throughout the night and into the morning, so no real need to do it now, but just something for me to be aware of. Look at this bloody cord, no matter where I put it, it's either in shot or it's tickling the back of my neck. It's still in shot. Never mind, pardon my bad admin. I hope you've enjoyed that somewhat rambling insight. I like doing these sorts of videos where I'm trying something for the very first time, because you get my thoughts on it, warts and all. It's not something that's polished. It's not something that's it's not something that may be incredibly useful to you. But remember, my channel isn't necessarily an instructional channel. It is more about me learning out loud, working out loud, and you accompanying me whilst I do that. If you take something from this video, brilliant. I don't know if you're going to take as much as I took from the experience of doing it though, so my apologies if that's the case, but hopefully you still took something from it. If you've not seen some of my more recent hammocking, I won't call them adventures, escapades, then a couple of them are appearing up on the screen now. One of them has been a recent overnighter, my first overnighter in my real hammock, and the first overnighter where I actually spent the entire night in the hammock and didn't get out onto the ground in the end. And the other video is where I'm experimenting with this new hammock, putting a thermarest in between the pocket that is naturally sewn into this tarp, so into this hammock. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, or just interested in seeing me spend the night out in the woods a few weeks ago, then why not click on one of those videos on the screen and check them out. If you're not yet a subscriber, shame on you, shame. Click on that subscribe button and you won't miss any future videos from my channel. Thanks as always for watching, folks. Take care, and I'll see you real soon. Cheers.